I would like now to hand over to Professor Rita Lages, who is currently working at the Human Rights Center at the University of Chile. Her research focus is on international human rights law and on regional integration law, especially on the European Union. And she's working in the field on international migration and asylum. And now her presentation is also about this one. Rita, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Caroline. Good morning or good afternoon to everyone who's listened to us. It's with a great joy, I must confess, that I'm here today, and I appreciate very much the invitation to be part of this good experience. And I will share a presentation on my screen so you can see some ideas that I prepared today, and then if you have any question or something more specific at the end of the activity of the expositions, you can ask me. So I think that everyone is seeing my screen now, and a PPT presentation, I guess, right? So, sorry. Yeah. So today I thought to share some reflections about migration and asylum policies, which is my field of study, and somehow to connect or try to make a connection between European Union, Latin America, and Africa around the same issue. And for that, I will start with analyzing the European Union migration and asylum policy, and how this European perspectives has some consequences and on Latin America and specific in Africa, and how the Europeans are trying to get involved African governments in their aim to prevent irregular migration and to management flows or migration flows. So very briefly, when we talk about European Union, we are talking about international organization with specific objectives and purpose, and also with exclusive and shared competences. And of course, the European Union has international legal personality. And this, it's important if we want to understand the European policies. And if we read the European treaties, the Treaty of the European Union and the Treaty of the Function of the European Union, we can see that we have a major structure that makes possible for the European Union to somehow have some competences on migration and asylum field. So we have the treaties as consecrated and a specific objective, that is the area of freedom, security, and justice. And within this, what we call the area of freedom, security, and justice, we can find migration and asylum issues. And this particular objective, which is it has a more political nature, we can see that this belongs to the shared competences, which means that asylum and policy and asylum are issues that can be both regulated by the European Union and also by the European member states. The rule is, or the general rule is that migration and asylum questions belongs to national competences, but the treaties they made possible to the European Union in some point or some specific subjects, and with the approval of the member states, it's possible for the European Union to elaborate and also to regulate or create norms in this domain. As I said, European Union has specific institutions, and each institution has also specific roles, and some people have a main role on this, on the exercise of this and development of the European institutions. When we talk about migration and asylum, we will see that all of the existence all the existent European institution has an important role. The Commission has the power to propose directives or regulation, and then the European Parliament and the Council of Ministers or Council of the European Union, who has the legislative power. They have the power to approve the directives and regulations within European Union. And also we have, of course, the European Council, who represents the member states, and where these questions are very discussed in every summit of the European Council. So, and also, we have an important institution, or an institution who has also in these matters an important role, which is the Court of Justice, because this court has the competences to exercise a control of legality of the European Union law, and to see if the European member states are accomplished with their legal obligations within this legal system. And many questions related to migration and asylum, they are solved and discussed by the Court of Justice. So having this general view of how it works, European Union and their institutions and powers, we will see that European Union is and has the potential to be a global actor, and usually European Union exercise this global power by three types of policies that we have in European Union: the enlargement policy, neighborhood policy, and also external relations. And in each of them, migration has a special place. In each of these three very different policies, because they accomplish different purposes, the migration and asylum questions or issues are within and are discussed. And through this three policies, European Union tries to develop and to have develop what we could say an European governance model of control and regulate migration and asylum. And we will see that, especially within the European Union neighborhood policy and European Union external relations, we will see that Europe develops sometimes a very straight and special relation with African countries, for example, and also with Latin America through the European Union external relations, with these third countries, specific from Africa or from Latin America, in order to somehow to management migration, international migration, specific, of course, from the European point of view, which means if the European Union see itself as a major destiny region that attracts many people around the world, and the idea from this European point of view is to somehow to select the people who can enter in the European Union and to develop specific conditions of entry, and also questions related with return and resettlement of people. This migration and asylum policies must be understood within the frame, the legal frame of what we call the Schengen area, which is a zone where which is composed by some European member states, but also with some non-European member states. So we will see that the states who belong to the Schengen area, most of them belongs to the European Union, of course, but there are so European countries that do not belong to the European Union, but are within this Schengen area, for example, Liechtenstein or Switzerland. And that means that these countries, they oblige itself to accomplish with European Union rules related on this matters on migration and asylum. And this somehow produce for the territorial jurisdiction where we can apply European Union law related with migration, of course. Schengen agreement started as an intergovernmental initiative. It was at the first moment international treaty, or and more specific, a regional treaty with some countries. At the beginning, we start with 6 countries, and then it was many more other European countries enter and adopt and accept to adopt this legal framework. And we also see that the main purpose of the Schengen area was to abolish internal checks on checks on the internal European Union's border in order to promote and facilitate the common market. So in order to have a developed economic market, we need, or the European member states, they agreed that it was necessary also to open or liberalize the movements within the European area to all people who try to cross those borders. But what we will see is that at the same time that European liberalized they reinforced the external borders. So it's more difficult to enter to the European Union, but once we are inside, it's more easier to circulate between countries who belongs to the Schengen area. This starts in the 80s, and the effective implementation of the Schengen agreements started in the 90s, in 1995 to be more exactly. And now what we have is this initial Schengen area. Now it's what we call the area of freedom, security, and justice, because it's more, it goes beyond migration and asylum questions, or the regulation of or the abolish of controls or borders controls, but also requires some policy and judicial cooperation on matters related with international crime organization, terrorism, etc. So now what we have is a complex set of rules related with visas. For example, we have the code, the Schengen code for visas. We have regulations on border controls with a specific code for that. And also we have an operational dimension of this regulation with specific agencies that were created in order to put forward and to make effective all this regulation. For example, one of the most important is known as Frontex, that since 2016 it is an European agency of bodyguards, of border guards, sorry. So this somehow this huge and complex legal status should be accomplished, and it's an obligation for the European member states, for some non-European member states, but who belongs to the Schengen area, but somehow third countries are obliged or to also accomplish with some of these obligations, because European Union, through this this external relation policy, somehow get involved or tries to get involved these third countries like Africa, Latin America, or even Asian countries, in order to make more effective their management migration policy. We will see that when we talk about European migration policy, we are talking about mainly regulation of migratory flows. With we have specific regulations to the or norms that regulate the entry and the residence of certain categories of migrants. For example, the Blue Card Directive, which is specific for high qualified migration, but we also can see directive on seasonal workers and also the Single Permit Directive. So we have in one side this, and this is very important part of the European Union regulation. And then we have also border management regulation with Schengen visa codes, or even the Schengen border codes. We have Frontex. We have also huge database. The two of them, the major two of them are on your screen. You can see Schengen Information System and Visa Information System. And as I said, they are huge database with all information of, for example, people who have a Schengen visa, or people who are forbidden to enter to the European Union territory. A small part of this European migration policy is dedicated to integration of migrants. It's the less developed part of the European migration policy, because belongs mainly to the to European members. It's a national competences and or national power, but here we can find some European Union rules. For example, the right to family reunification, for example, or even an action plan elaborated by the Commission to the integration of third country nationals. And finally, a fourth part of this migration policy is composed by what we call irregular migration and return. It's one of the main objectives of this and worries of the European Union is to reinforce the external borders controls in order to stop irregular migration, and also some criminal issues related with regular migration, like smuggling of migrants or traffic of people, of human beings, which is also very important. And finally, cooperation with third countries through what we called readmission agreements and return directive. And this part of this specific element of cooperation through readmission agreements, and also the question of return, we will see that third countries play a very important role within European migration and asylum policies. Finally, the asylum policy is also it's also a very important policy within European Union. And it's in this right now is one of the most questioned policy inside European Union. It's the European member states are trying to monitor this framework since 2016, but they cannot have or to construct an agreement, a common agreement on how we should modify the actual common European asylum system. Questions related with third safe countries, with the responsible state for analyzing the asylum applications. All these specific questions are very, I would say, they are very politicized right now, and there are no consensus within European Union. We have here, could say, two major groups. On one of the groups is liderated by, for example, Germany, who are more in favor of receiving asylum seekers, and also in order, they are very in favor to approve common solidarity mechanisms to receive and to reubicate asylum seekers within the continent or within the European Union. And on the other side, we have mainly the countries from the eastern part of the continent, what we call the Visegrado group, where are, for example, Hungary or Poland, which are more contrary to this certification of asylum seekers, for example. So here we have some internal conflicts, political conflicts, that somehow justify that since 2016 we haven't managed to within the European Union to have a reform of the what we call the Dublin system. And because of the major migration crisis in 2015, the European Commission proposed an European agenda on migration, because European Commission has this competence to propose policies. And back then, Jean-Claude Juncker, the president of the European Commission back then, he elaborated what we called an European agenda on migration. And if we analyze this agenda, which was between 2015 and 2020, we see, if we read the document, we see that third countries, as I said, play a huge role or important role within this policy. And within third countries specific, Africa has special references to this, because it's one of the main areas of origin of migration and of migrant people. So we see that the way that European Union find to get involved the African countries within their policy, European policy of migration and asylum. It was through what we called regional development and protection programs, which are within within the European Union external relation. We will find a specific issue or subject related with international cooperation and development. So inside of this cooperation and development policy, we will see that European institutions try to get inside some countries, African countries, in order to help European Union to control their borders. For example, we will see specific reference to Niger or to Mali, for example, and not only within this regional development protection programs, but also within the common security and defense policy. So we have two ways, international cooperation and development, and also security and defense issue or policy. We also have that European Union is trying to get cooperation with African countries or some African countries. And we see this to accomplish the main objective of tackle migration upstream, but also in order to addressing the causes of irregular and forced displacement. Because one of the major objectives of the European Union migration policy is to, according to the European institution, is to solve the problem in the origin, in the countries of origin. So the idea is to tackle what are provoking the migration movements and identifying these causes. So we will have to develop some specific answers to that. So in this, inside this idea, we see also, once again, that the presence of reference to African countries are important within this agenda, through once again cooperation, external cooperation assistance, which involved, of course, money in order to develop internal structure of some countries, or even it goes to help to help the national guards, for example, of this as they see African countries control better their borders. This is the better way to avoid huge flows of migration, of migrants, to the European continent. And also we have also European Union bets for this what we call regional process of dialogues, and some of these dialogues are formal, some are informal, and these regional programs with European Union and also with Asia and with Africa. Border management is also a very important issue, and here what the European Union is trying to do is to somehow to standard or to create what they call the European Union standard for border management, and somehow to export this union standard to third countries. And in order to do that, they think that Frontex, this agency that I told you, the idea is to help to create this, or to develop this better standards of border control in some African countries with the help of Frontex, with guards and specific material, for example. And this happens, for example, with some countries of the north of the continent. And also the idea is to also is to what the European Union calls maximizing the development benefits for the countries of origin. So the idea is to develop some human resource and somehow to promote the movement inside the region, and to export somehow what we have with the Schengen area, with the liberal movements within the European continent, but to reproduce somehow that in Africa, within the African Union, for example, in order to create some free movement of labor workers within Africa with African workers, and because the European Union believes that this is a good way to develop economic development to the continent. And finally, we have other important issue here, which is resettlement. And also here, Africa once again has a special reference, and the idea is that to establish priority regions for resettlement, and within these priority regions we find North of Africa and so also the Horn of Africa. But what was the consequences of all this European approach to migration and its impact in Africa? One of the consequences, and the most important from this perspective of the European Union, is what we call the externalization of the Schengen border control. Now, what we have, if in theory the regional, the geographical border between Africa and Europe is the Mediterranean, what we see with this externalization of Schengen border control is that somehow the southern border of the Sahel was transformed in a European border, because this these African countries are controlled of course, their borders, but the aim of controlling this border is to avoid the flow of people to the European continent. So somehow the border, the Sahel border, functions as an European border, as a Schengen border. And of course, this also creates some local and regional problems that in many cases European Union doesn't attend. And finally, what we'll see now this week, as I think many of you know, the European Commission proposed a new pact. It is in discussion, but what we can see from this new pact on migration is and asylum, we see that there is a continuation of this of the existence approach concerning third country partners, which means that third countries like African countries have an important and a function role to European Union, because the idea is somehow to get involved African countries in this in the question of border control, of the European border control, and for that European Union will try to use the international cooperation for that through the celebration of and the sign of treaties of readmission, for example, with some African countries. There are already some who are in force, like with Cape Verde, for example, are in force, but they are also with other African countries that are being negotiated. And also the major worry about regular migration and specific migrant smuggling, and the idea that European Union should work with Africa, for example, and the African Union to control or to fight against this phenomena. And also maximizing once again this international partnerships with African Union and specific countries, and also for the first time we see here also a reference, a special reference to Latin America. For example, the pact, the Migration Pact of 2015 doesn't have any reference to Latin America, but now for the first time we have this reference, and I guess, or my guess is because of the Venezuelan migration, which is an important flow within the Latin America region, but also had experienced an increase in some European countries like Spain, Italy, or Portugal, for example, because of the historical migration routes and connections between this country and the three South European countries. And also we see that European Union tries to maintain their worries on to develop legal pathways between Europe and Africa, and with this they will maybe launch a new initiative, what we call what European Union called the talent partnerships, and it's related with high qualification migration in order to attract migrant workers very qualified from these third countries, Africa, Asia, and also from Latin America. And finally, to finish my presentation, I just would like to give some reference what we now assist from, I don't know, since 2011, I think we see in Latin America an increase of African migration to the continent. So it's a new dimension from South-South migration between Africa and Latin America. The majority of this African migration in the Latin America continent or sub-region is it's a transit migration. The idea of this the majority of the African migrants and asylum seekers is to reach the north of the continent, United States and also Canada, and they try to longer routes, more dangerous routes, and they are exposed to many problems or many difficult situations in the region because due to what we see, the lack of consular and diplomatic representations of the African countries in Latin America, the language barrier, the lack of documentation, and the high cost of the return. All these situations are somehow causing some important problems related with human rights of migrants, difficult to access to a free legal assistance. We also see some connection between migration or irregular migration and the emergence of some illegal activities related with traffic of people, and for example, in Colombia and all the Central America, we see this, which means that many of African migrants are exposed to very difficult situations of safety and also from human rights. So I just wanted to give some general idea. I think, or I hope that I didn't get much of your time. And if you have any question or comments, I will have the pleasure to answer to you at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your informative presentation. You highlighted, the European migration policy, the asylum policy. You got, such a detailed, you said general, but also you gave a lot of details also on the legal framework and on the mechanisms. And I think it is very important how Schengen works, especially for our students in Tanzania, as they are working also on regional integration. And I think it gives a lot of insights, and probably they have questions from a comparative perspective.